I realized that if I didn't take that risk, I would never see the reward that I really wanted to see in life, which for me was retiring my parents.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Candy Valentino Show. Thanks so much for tuning in and spending this time with me today. I'm so excited that you get to listen into this conversation that I'm having with Jasmine Jonte, the founder of Creation, which is a done-for-you course creation company, but they actually do more than that, which we're going to unpack. Jasmine, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad we got to do this because we have not just the professional relationship, we've worked together in Founders, you've done work for me, so I just wanted to share with our audience a lot of what you do because I think it's so valuable for entrepreneurs to be able to understand that one, what you do exists. Because as somebody that came from the life that I had before, I didn't even know that someone could do a lot of the stuff that you do. But before we get into that, I want to unpack a little bit about how you got to this place in your business now, because you weren't like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start a company. Tell everyone about what you did prior to starting your business.
So before business, I was a teacher. I taught in the lowest performing school in the country, which was in Detroit, Michigan, and at the time. And I taught kindergarten and first grade. So I taught the littles, taught the babes. And I didn't even know business was a thing. Like, your dad owned a business, right? So you always grew up knowing that it was an option. I come from blue, white-collar parents who just worked for other people. I didn't have a single relationship in my life of someone who owned a business. So when my best friend actually started to get involved in a business, she reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to start a business with me? And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I did not really understand what it meant. But she had me at, you can stay home with your dog and work from home. And I was like, sounds great.
That's so funny because it sounds like she's asking you to go to brunch. Like, hey, do you want to go start a business with me?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, first it was like, can you get some side money, do a side hustle, and then eventually grow it into being full time. And I think it was part like moving away from the pain of being in the classroom, because it was a very toxic workplace that I was in. It was really hard what my kids were going through, and just like the compassion fatigue that comes with that over years. But also moving toward the pleasure of, I could actually like live my life by design. I could travel. I could like own a home. I could potentially earn financial freedom. Like that, all of those were completely new ideas outside of the whole, go to college, get a job, work forever for someone else, retire, and then live your life. Like that was the paradigm I had.
Yeah. That's so fascinating because that's so different. Like, our own reality is all we know, right? For a certain period of time. So it's so interesting that like you didn't even think about that as an option until it was presented. As somebody maybe that's watching or listening right now, that they're in that place of they have a full-time job, maybe they have a side hustle, maybe they're not 100% sure what they want to do. What was the tipping point for you? I mean, obviously she said you can stay at home, but from when did it go from, oh my gosh, I'm going to go all in and quit my safe job and build this business?
I realized that if I didn't take that risk, I would never see the reward that I really wanted to see in life, which for me was retiring my parents. So often we hear, your why has to be bigger than you. You need a why that makes you cry, all that. But that why, that's exactly what got me into action, and like scary big action. Not like, oh, I'm going to, build my little business and like make a couple $100 extra a month. Like it was like, no, I'm going to work 80 hours a week and figure this out, like come hell or high water. Like there was no other option. So why bigger than
leverage. Me. Yeah, big why, big leverage. And then what do you feel when you were like, okay, I'm doing this? What were some of the first things that you think you had to overcome first in order to then do it? Because it's one thing to have the idea, I'm going to do this and my why's so big and I have leverage, but then it's a whole other animal to actually go do it. What were some of the things? Was it mindset? Was it being around people? What do you feel were some of the first things you had to get in order to go do it?
Both of those things, both mindset and being around other people. I did what Tony Robbins, calls immersion. And I just read every book I could get my hand on. I listened to every podcast I could about entrepreneurship and mindset and limiting beliefs because I didn't even know what that was. Like the first time I read Jen Sincero's book, You Are a Badass, and she talks about limiting beliefs. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting on the couch in Nashville reading this book and think to myself, why would anyone have a belief that limits themselves? Like it was like I just didn't get it, you know? So it was a lot of that, just like immersion into books, podcasts, and then when I could afford them, events. Yeah. And like getting actually in the room.
That's so good.
With people.
Yeah, it's so important in the beginning, right? Because I always say that you can have the best strategies, but if you don't fix the like 6 inches between your ears first, you're going to go try, fail, and then you're going to want to go back to your original job or whatever it is that you're doing. Did you have any of that in the beginning? Did you have any moments where you were like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I shouldn't have done this. I think I want to go back. Was there any of that?
I would often think, wouldn't it be easier if I just, you know, punched my card every morning? Like, wouldn't it be easier than not knowing what I'm doing the majority of the time? Because when you know nothing about entrepreneurship and then you become an entrepreneur, basically just making mistakes all day.
Yeah.
And I just remember always weighing that balance with, but that would mean I would have to give up making my own schedule, working from home, like all of the almost like creature comforts that I found in running my own business. So that even though it was hard, it was worth it to me. But yeah, there was definitely moments I was like, oh, wouldn't it be easier? And I'd give myself a 5-minute pity party and then move on.
But you didn't.
Didn't.
You stuck in it.
Yep.
And what made you get into the company that you started? So obviously teaching background, I know what you do because you've done it for me and worked with me before, and we're going to unpack all of that. But what made you pick that? Did you know right away, or was it just like, oh, I'm going to figure out what this business is?
I did some other things first. After I did that whole personal development immersion, I realized there was this really underserved community of people who were into personal development, but didn't have support to stay accountable and support to be connected with like-minded people. And so my first thing was creating programs for those people. Okay. So I took my teaching expertise, I took the personal development I had learned, and I applied it by helping people. And what I quickly realized was my retention rates were nuts. Like people just didn't leave. And my completion rates were amazing. And I thought, wow, like, okay, so I can apply my teaching skill to this other industry and it'll work. But I could not figure out marketing. Like, huge hole. Had no idea what I was doing. So I started buying courses about how to market your services and how to sell. And I quickly realized they were really bad. Like, these people were doing multiple 7 figures a year, and I would get into their program, open those, digital doors to the course for the first time, and thought they have no idea what they're doing. It's going to take me so long to get a result from this. So we've all taken a junky course, unfortunately. Yeah. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? There are people who really don't have the skill that I have, and I would be able to impact even more people if I couple what I know how to do with this teaching, which is teaching, with what they know how to do, which is marketing and sales. So it took me a few years to get there, but once I landed, it was like that perfect fusion of what I'm good at, what I really know how to do, and what I love to do.
Yeah. And you saw a need. You saw something that you weren't recreating. I just want everyone to hear all of that you just shared, because it applies to so many people in business. You weren't trying to recreate and invent something. You were taking something that you were like, oh my gosh, these are not very good. I think I can do that better. And you really found the intersection of what you know, what you had experience in, what somebody is already willing to pay for, and then just operating from a place that you can do it better in, and then implementing that and doing it. And I think that's where people get stuck, is they'll see that need and then they don't go do it. But then you were like, okay, wait a minute. And then the other thing I think is so awesome that you said was that you knew you didn't have skills in this area, but you went ahead and developed them. And I think that's another place that entrepreneurs get stuck sometimes, is because they're like, well, I don't know this thing, but I'm going to just try to keep it my way. I don't want anyone to know that I don't know this thing. And then they stay stuck as opposed to getting the support and the help that they need. And now you're working with all entrepreneurs, a lot of solo entrepreneurs, right? And entrepreneurs of all kinds that need your services. So let's fast forward a little bit in your journey. You found out, okay, these are really crappy courses. I can do better than this. What came next?
So I put a post on Facebook because I knew nothing about marketing, but I knew I had relationships there. And I went to Facebook and said, I'm an online course ghostwriter. Does anyone need to build a course? And sure enough, like first 5-figure client off of one Facebook post.
Wow.
Like it was wild. It was the most money I'd ever made in a day. You know, I come from a $38,000 teaching salary. So it was awesome. And like the processes and the systems and my method and how I worked with clients, it just flew out of me. Like it was the easiest thing in the world.
Wow.
So that was then. And then now, you know, we do work with a lot of like professional service providers, right, who want to get leverage on their time. And then we work with more established course creators or companies who just need to up level their programs.
Yeah. And give me an example of professional services, because I know we have a lot of people that watch the show.
Well, we've got therapists, accountants, CFOs, lawyers, Judge Anthony,
That's
the
right,
lovely Judge Anthony.
That's right.
Yeah, so all kinds of different service.
Oh my gosh, he should be a testament on his own to what you do, because his course, obviously, and again, this is the way everybody should start, in my opinion.
I agree.
You might, okay, good.
No,
I was going to say, oh gosh, you probably
totally
disagree.
Totally agree.
Is as far as like, because everyone thinks, and we are definitely going to get into this, that you create this beautiful course, you throw up a post online, and all of a sudden you're going to have a 7-figure launch, or insert any online product, right? Any educational product. And so what Anthony did was created his own. It wasn't the greatest, but he just refined it. And I think if he would have went and spent all of that money up front, he would have quit because he wouldn't have had the result that he had wanted. And I see that a lot in a lot of business owners. So I think for in my opinion, I always say you need to start with what you know, because you need to then revise it and make it better. And you need the feedback, the data from the people that bought it of what's good, what's not. If you invest everything into it, you actually don't know what you need to change and fix, right? It's almost like if you went and tried to build the $1 billion company before you built a $1 million company, you probably would take so long to get there that you might fizzle out. So for anyone that's wanting to create, and I know you said course, but I really think what you do is so much broader as far as like education and training programs for people's employees. And like, I think back in the day, how nice would it have been to have an online portal where all of my staff could go in and hear our values and our mission statements and how we run our customer service standards, so they didn't have to read them in a book. But you do that too. So what are some of the other, aside from courses, what are some of the big components that you have been helping entrepreneurs create, and how that system saves them time in their business?
Yeah, we do a ton of like high ticket group programs. So the person who has one-on-one and they want to leverage their time, but you need a curriculum and a training in order to do that effectively. So we do a ton of those. Live event trainings, like live event keynote presentations, or just full day events, multiple day event programming. We've done that. And then sometimes we'll do lead magnets, workbooks, accompaniments to actual books, right? So it's really any kind of learning experience, any kind of experience where you're transferring your knowledge to someone else, because teaching is a skill. So just like writing copy is a skill, sales is a skill, ops is a skill, like these are all skills, and so is teaching. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, I know what I know, so I can just teach it. And it's not the same thing. And even going from people who have done one-on-one services or taught one-on-one, when you teach one-on-one, it's like you have this whole, file of, or, you have this whole drawer of files in your brain. And you're like, okay, she needs this file. So you take it out and you give it to her and it solves her problem. But when you're teaching a group, it's like you need to know the 10 out of 100 files that everybody needs to know and what order to put them in, which is really hard for most entrepreneurs. So really the teaching skill is what we do.
And you're so good at it. And I'm not being paid to say any of this. I actually pay you. But because I've noticed it's one thing to do something. For me at least, it was so incredibly, my brain is just wired to do it. I actually have to stop my brain and be like, no, wait, how do I teach this? And it took me at least 2 years to even figure that out in a live format with one-to-one people, which was so valuable to me to have consulting clients along the way. Cause I'm like, consulting, you're just kind of fixing problems. You're not coaching them on how to solve their own problem, but you always want to leave people better than you found them. So it's like, how can I also transfer this knowledge? And what I love is even in my next book, you're doing all the graphics, all the worksheets, not you, your company's doing all of the things that it's like, okay, how do I take this point that I know and transfer it to meet the person where they are, which is so much harder than just one-on-one telling someone and adjusting the information. So I love how you said the file cabinet. That's so brilliant. And so the other thing too is like, anyone needs to do that for all of their employees. So even if you never want to create an education product, you are still educating and training your employees. And I think that's the one sleep zone that most people on what you offer, they don't even think and connect that like, oh my gosh, I can take all of this stuff that I need to tell every single person I hire and I can condense it all into one place and I don't need to be the one to create it all. Like, I think it's massively valuable.
Especially for service provider companies, because you can take that content. Like I'm thinking of a CFO that we worked with, and we took what she does, like what's the tax strategy you love? Hiring your kids.
Oh yeah,
and there's a couple of them.
Augusta Roll.
Yeah. So we made little like mini courses related to each of those strategies, so that someone could buy that program off the website and implement it themselves, or they could hire her and her team to do it. But she uses that exact same training to train her new hires, and they use the same resources, they use the same templates, they use the same spreadsheets. Like it's literally cut and paste. So it's like this idea of multi-purpose content.
Yeah. And then it develops your own IP, which is, and again, we talk about this on the show, but is going to increase your valuation whenever you go to exit, because now you have all this proprietary that's baked in, which is one of the key P's on getting a high return on EBITDA. So it's like now you're developing proprietary assets. And you can be like, well, that thing really worked. Let's go trademark that. Let's go copyright a book that's on top of that. And you can see how like it's almost like opening Pandora's box to see where all of these things can go just by doing one thing. And that's what, I love. How do we do one thing, and then get it everywhere? Because it's maximizing your time, right? And we only have so much of that, and that should have an ROI on it. And what I love about what you do is it's not just like, well, this course has this workbook and that's all it is. It's like now these workbooks can be repurposed for lead gen to try and gain emails for new clients to find out about you. So I love that. Is that something you strategically weaved in, or did you just find out like, oh my gosh, these can be repurposed all over the place and save clients money?
I think I discovered it somewhere along the way. And probably a client asked me, like, can I just use, like, permission, right? Can I just use my own content that I paid you to create? But can I just use this as a lead magnet? And what's great is, like, the more clients you work with inside of your program, the more they will give you feedback around, you should take this and make it a mini training and put it in the middle of your funnel. And that's where I get really excited, is the entire offer suite, and how can we put upsells and cross sells inside of it, so that when they're in program 1, they already know about programs 2, 3, and 4, and they can already see themselves inside of it, once they're done with program 1. So, there's all kinds of dynamic things you can do, but you have to think about it from that strategic place, which you're so great at with business, right? Is you have this amazing strategic brain, and I do that with courses. Like, how can we get the most out of doing this one thing one time?
Yeah. Exactly. And I think we really clicked on that, because that's exactly how I see business. Like, okay, how can we do this? Then how can this apply in a bunch of different ways, so that you as the founder get to then work on the business and aren't constantly stuck in it? And let's speak to a moment for the people that are like, well, you know what? Okay, I think I want an education. I'm an attorney. I think this is really great. Like, I obviously have a lot of clients like that, because they know that people need that information, upcoming attorneys, or we're just using them as an example. But let's say someone's like, okay, I think I want this education course. I see all these people talk about, you just create this thing and then you put up a Facebook post and then you make hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? What is the real world, if we can kind of like bust through the myth? How does it actually work once you have the product created?
Courses do not make you passive income.
Oh, did you hear that, guys? Okay.
Full stop.
I didn't pay her to say that.
Courses allow you to leverage your time. And with the extra time that you have, you can then work on marketing, so that you have a business that's running without you needing to spend time to create income.
Say that one more time.